Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. What a phenomenal day for the Oregon Duck fans as we start our day talking about Dan Lanning staying right home in Eugene, and we end our day with Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks landing the premier wide receiver available in the transfer portal and very likely maybe the best wide receiver we see in college football in 2024 with Evan Stewart committing to the Oregon Ducks. And we got on earlier today and talked about why it made sense for Dan Lanning to stay put in Eugene and talked about what I think is an extremely special thing being built in Eugene under Dan Lanning. And this is kind of the evidence why. I mean, Evan Stewart, a guy that every single Power 5 team across the country would want on their roster heading to 2024. Dan Lanning able to lock him in. This is a program that we talked about earlier as being a team that I think can compete, maybe even be favorites to win the Big Ten. I would like to expand on that and say this is a team that can win a national championship in the 2024 year with the star power they have on offense, with how complete in the improvements we saw on the defensive side of the football. Want to talk about Evan Stewart, talk about what this Oregon offense is going to look like in 2024. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out to the Oregon fans. We hopped on earlier this morning and kind of just gave you guys my thoughts, my opinions on this Oregon Ducks football program and what I think it can be under Dan Lanning. And the amount of support you guys have shown, that was absolutely awesome. Responded to every single one of you guys, read every single one of your comments. That stuff means the world to me. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. You can bet this is a team we're going to be talking a lot about this offseason and into that 2024 season. Again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for the support. And without further ado, let's get into Evan Stewart. And we could go on and on about what Evan Stewart brings to this Oregon offense. I mean, there's a reason he's the number 2 overall player in the country, the number 1 wide receiver available in the transfer portal. This was a guy that 12 months ago, I remember my brother telling me, I think he's the second best wide receiver in the country as a true freshman, only second to Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, his numbers are not quite reflective at Texas A&M in 2023 of what the player actually is. That Texas A&M offense dealt with quarterback injuries. They dealt with not a very good offense. Evan Stewart is a premier player, a guy that's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick in 2025, one of the more special players that we see in college football. We could go on and on, but I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with Evan Stewart. I want to talk more about what this wide receiver room is going to look like and generally what this offense is going to look like in 2024. Now, you have Bo Nix and Troy Franklin leaving, and I think the conversation was, is this offense going to potentially take a step back with Bo Nix and Troy Franklin off to the NFL? This was an offense that 41 points per game, number 4 in the country, 516 yards of total offense. That was number 2 in the country, 7.6 yards per play, number 2 in the country. This was a top 3 offense pretty much across all metrics. I think when the portal started, maybe say, yeah, we might see a little dip, right? You lost Bo Nix, who was a Heisman caliber quarterback. You lost Troy Franklin, who was one of the better wide receivers in the country. I'm looking at this Oregon offense as we sit right now, looking towards the 2024 season and say, I don't know if this offense is going to have even a little bit of a fall off. I mean, Dillon Gabriel comes in as being one of the more productive quarterbacks that we've seen in college football the last couple of years. You have Dante Moore, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, added to that quarterback room. But I want to talk about the talent that is going to be around Dillon Gabriel and Dante Moore, and specifically in this wide receiver room where Evan Stewart is a guy that there's not a route that he can't run. There's not anything really on the football field that Evan Stewart does not excel at. But what I think Evan Stewart is best at is stretching that field, going up and playing the football, has tremendous hands, tremendous body control. And why I focus on that attribute of Evan Stewart is because that's what I think they kind of needed. Like Troy Franklin was magic when he was working vertically down the field. I think Evan Stewart can come in and play that role. And what does that open it up for Tez Johnson is those underneath routes. I mean, if you're a defense trying to deal with this Oregon offense, you need to have a safety right over Evan Stewart, or else it's going to be tough sledding for you on the defensive side of the football. And when your defense and your safeties need to respect attacking the deeper third, a guy like Evan Stewart, it is going to open up the short intermediate route tree for Tez Johnson, who I think is arguably one of the best slot receivers that we see in the country. And Dillon Gabriel loves to go that kind of route, right? You look at Dillon Gabriel and all the success he had at Oklahoma, it was going to the slot wide receiver in Drake Stoops. So now you have a guy in Evan Stewart who is going to make a lot of plays, vertically down the field. But I think this is an even bigger story for a guy like Tez Johnson, who I think truly is going to feast in that short intermediate route tree where he's getting the ball quick, making people miss in space. I look at this offense and you sprinkle in a guy like Gary Bryant, or you sprinkle in a guy like Trayshawn Holden. Trayshawn Holden, I think, can have a breakout year in 2024. If you're an offense or you're an opposing defense, how are you stopping this Oregon offense? And that's not to mention guys like Jurion Dickey or Kyler Casper or Terrence Ferguson coming back, Kenny Sadiq, the amount of playmakers that are going to be around a veteran quarterback like Dillon Gabriel is kind of wild. And for a defensive coordinator, I don't know what defense that you can draw up to stop this kind of offense. And then you look at the offensive line, Josh Conley or Johnny Cornelius coming back. You got Poncho at the center. That offense looks awesome. And then the run game with Jordan James, Noah Whittington, that looks like it's still going to be a top 10 rushing attack in the country. When you have a team, and this is why I was kind of so high on this Oregon team throughout the 2023 season, it's a team that can attack you through the air, but it's also a team that if you want to leave your two safeties high, they are going to run the football all over you. And you look at this Oregon offense in 2024, and we just listed all those stats that we saw from this Oregon team in 2023. And I'm thinking, I don't know if this offense even takes a dip. And that's not me disrespecting Bo Nix. He was one of the best quarterbacks that we saw in college football last year. Not disrespecting Troy Franklin. It's more recognizing that this offense has just completely reloaded. And if you're an Oregon fan, you look at that offense and say, that is an offense that I really struggle to see many defenses stopping consistently. And I don't care if it's Pac-12 defenses. I don't care if it's Big Ten defenses. This is an offense that has too much firepower for defenses to deal with. Now, you look at the defensive side of the football and you're seeing the improvement. A lot of guys like Jordan Birch coming back for this Oregon team. I think the vibe in this Oregon room, and I think another reason Dan Lanning stays, not to mention this program, I think can reach new heights with Dan Lanning. But why did everybody come back on the defensive side of the ball, or a lot of these playmakers come back? I think because they know they can do something special in 2024. You look back at that 2023 season, this is nothing taken away from the Washington Huskies, but you lost 2 games to a Washington Husky team that went and played for national championship. And quite frankly, I think Oregon, you play those games 10 times. I think Oregon's winning a decent amount of those games. It came down to 2 games. And the national championship was much in the conversation for this Oregon team. And now you look at them going to the Big Ten and you look at them playing in 2024. I said earlier that I think Oregon might be my favorite to win the Big Ten heading into this year. I think the addition of Evan Stewart certainly makes me feel better about saying that, but I would like to expand that. Now, you look at the Big Ten, Michigan going to lose a lot of NFL draft picks. Again, Ohio State, probably the weakest that they've been in a while, although they're returning a lot of talent. Penn State, this is an Oregon team that's asserting themselves right in at the upper echelon of that Big Ten conference. But then you look broadly, and I think this is a team that going into year 3 has developed in the trenches enough, has gotten by far enough star power to kind of be an explosive offense. I'm starting to look at the college football landscape, the college football playoff landscape. Say how many teams can deal with what Oregon is bringing to the table in 2024. And I think the answer is not that many. And again, I don't mean to overreact to one transfer, but Evan Stewart is a difference maker. And I think Oregon's done a phenomenal job recruiting at the high school level. They got a lot of veterans returning. They've done a very good job getting other key pieces in the transfer portal, like guys like Kobe Savage. I look at this team, and this team can do some serious damage in 2024. And to kind of go back to what we talked a little bit about this morning, and that is this is a program. And I think the Evan Stewart commitment just kind of makes this more clear. Like a lot of people would say, well, Dan Lanning is crazy for not taking the job at Alabama. I look at this Oregon team and say, all right, the next 4 or 5 years, I think this Oregon team can be one of those premier programs. I think Dan Lanning certainly believes that. And that's why he's staying right put in Eugene. He has everything he wants to win a national championship. And the addition of Evan Stewart just makes that fact a little bit more clear. A massive gap. And we spent a lot of time talking Oregon the last couple of days, so I'll keep it short for you guys. But you look at this gap and you look at how this team is coming together in 2024, it looks like it's going to be a special team. Evan Stewart, cannot wait to see him in this Oregon offense. And again, when you start replicating and putting together those offenses we saw in 2023, you're going to get talent like Dillon Gabriel and Dante Moore and Evan Stewart wanting to come play for this offense. I think it's just a little bit of a snowball. I think you're going to see a lot more of these kind of commitments. Massive get for the Oregon Ducks. You guys can tell late night, 9:30 Eastern time here. Fired up. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again, the Oregon Duck fans. You guys have shown a ton of love. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.